Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I am back with some more esoterica. Today we are diving back into the works of Mr. Manly Hall. This is the Secret Teachings of All Ages. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various topics that are brought to light by the text. It's not the format for everybody, but some people seem to enjoy it, so you are more than welcome to tag along. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in the terminology, there are several playlists linked in the corner above and in the box down below, along with the original source material so that you can get a better understanding of me, what I stand for, and how I came to get here. Of particular relevance today is more than likely going to be the unconventional Bible study, and beyond that, the unconventional prophecy study, because I hold some severely unconventional beliefs. It's not that I don't, or that I just dismiss the comments that y'all are leaving on the last couple of videos. It's that I have already thoroughly discussed all of the arguments that you are making, so I am not going to engage in your comments. Right, you are more than welcome to leave all of the comments, and if they remain respectful, they will get left up. But I don't have to answer them if I have already spent 161 hours answering your questions. You may not like the things that I have discovered by doing the Bible study, but it doesn't change the fact that they are there. It doesn't change the fact that I have some very valid reasons for believing the way that I do. And today is probably also going to upset some people because I hold a very different view of the apocalypse. I hold a very different view of the book of Revelations. And while I have not read this ahead, we are dealing with the mystery of the apocalypse. So it is almost certainly going to step on some toes. So I'm going to say this here in the beginning. I'll say it again at the end. But I hold some unconventional beliefs, and I have a tendency of stepping on toes when I am talking about those beliefs. It is not intentional, but I do not apologize for it in any way, shape, or form. I am merely doing what I am required to do. With that being said, let us dive into the text and discuss the mystery of the apocalypse. The presence of the Temple of Diana at Ephesus marked that city as sacred to the mystery religion. For the seven wonders of the ancient world were erected to indicate the repositories of recondite knowledge. Of Ephesus, H.P. Blavatsky writes, "It was a focus of the universal secret doctrines, the weird laboratory where, fashioned in elegant Grecian phraseology, sprang the quintessence of Buddhistic, Zoroastrian, and Chaldean philosophy. Artemis, the gigantic concrete symbol of the theosophico-pantheistic abstractions, the Great Mother, Multimama, Androgyne, and the patroness of the Ephesian writings, was conquered by Paul. But although zealous converts of the apostles pretended to burn all of their books on curious arts, enough of these remained for them to study when their first zeal had cooled off. See Isis Unveiled. Being a great center of pagan learning, Ephesus has been the locale for many early Christian myths. The assertion has been made that it was the last domicile of the Virgin Mary, and that the tomb of St. John the Divine was located there. According to legend, St. John did not depart from this life in the usual manner, but, selecting his vault, entered it while still alive, and closing the entrance behind him, vanished forever from mortal sight. A rumor was current in ancient Ephesus that St. John would sleep in his tomb until the return of the Savior, and that when the apostles turned over on his sepulchre couch, the earth above moved like coverlets on a bed. I love that. That is absolutely awesome. Not true, but absolutely awesome. Subjected to more criticism than any other book now incorporated in the New Testament, the Apocalypse, popularly accredited to St. John the Divine, is by far the most important but least understood of the Gnostic Christian writings. Though Justin Martyr declared the book of Revelation to have been written by John, one of Christ's apostles, its authorship was disputed as early as the 2nd century after Christ. In the 3rd century, these contentions became acute, and even Dionysius of Alexandria and Eusebius attacked the Johannine theory, declaring that both the book of Revelation and the Gospel according to St. John was written by one Cerinthius, who borrowed the name of the great apostle to better foist his own doctrines upon the Christians. Later, Jerome questioned the authorship of the Apocalypse, and during the Reformation his objections were revived by Luther and Erasmus. The once generally accepted notion that the book of Revelation was the actual record of a mystical experience occurring to St. John while that seer was in exile on the Isle of Patmos is now regarded with disfavor by more critical scholars. Other explanations have therefore been advanced to account for the symbolism permeating the volume and the original motive for its writing. The more reasonable of these theories may be summed up as follows. First, upon the weight of evidence furnished by its own contents, the book of Revelation may well be pronounced a pagan writing, one of the sacred books of the Eleusinian or Phrygian mysteries. As a corollary, the real author of the work, setting forth the profundities of Egyptian and Greek mysticism, must have been an initiate himself, and consequently obligated to write only in the symbolic language of the mysteries. That's a wild interpretation. Second, it is possible that the book of Revelation was written to reconcile the seeming discrepancies between the early Christian and pagan religious philosophies. When the zealots of the primitive Christian church sought to Christianize pagandom, the pagan initiates retorted with a powerful effort to paganize Christianity. The Christians failed, but the pagans succeeded. With the decline of paganism, the initiated pagan hierophants transferred their base of operations to the new vehicle of primitive Christianity, adopting the symbols of the new cult to conceal those eternal verities which are ever priceless possession of the wise. The Apocalypse clearly shows the resultant fusion of pagan and Christian symbolism, and thus bears irrefutable evidence of the activities of those initiated minds operating through early Christianity. Third, the theory has been advanced that the book of Revelation represents the attempt made by the unscrupulous members of a certain religious order to undermine the Christian mysteries by satirizing their philosophy. This nefarious end they hope to attain by showing the new faith to be merely a restatement of ancient pagan doctrines, by heaping ridicule upon Christianity, and by using its own symbols towards its disparagement. For example, the star which fell to earth, Revelation 8:10-11, could be construed to mean a star of Bethlehem. And the bitterness of that star, called wormwood, which poisoned mankind, could signify the false teachings of the Christian church. While the last theory has gained a certain measure of popularity, the profundity of the Apocalypse leads the discerning reader to the inevitable conclusion that this is the least plausible of the three hypotheses. To be able to pierce the veil of its symbolism, the inspired source of the document requires no further corroborative evidence. In the final analysis, true philosophy can be limited by neither creed nor faction. In fact, it is incompatible with every artificial limitation of human thought. The question of the pagan or Christian origin of the book of Revelation is, consequently, of little importance. The intrinsic value of the book lies in its magnificent epitome of the universal mystery, an observation which led St. Jerome to declare that it is susceptible of 7 entirely different interpretations, and more than that, more than likely. Untrained in the reaches of ancient thought, the modern theologian cannot possibly cope with the complexities of the Apocalypse. Did we not just do the last chapter? For to him, this mystic writing is but a phantasmagoria, the divine inspiration of which he is sorely tempted to question. And in the limited space here available, it is possible to sketch but briefly a few of the salient features of the vision of the seer of Patmos. A careful consideration of the various pagan mysteries will assist materially also in filling in the inevitable gaps in this abridgment. And here we're going to go ahead and stop for just a minute. I had the distinct pleasure yesterday of seeing in person a lot of this symbolism. Now, it was not a pleasurable experience because I was at the funeral of my grandfather, and of course that's a sad occasion. But I had not stepped foot inside of a Catholic church in 20 years, at least. And I had not stepped into it with the knowledge that we have been gaining here in this particular study, particularly this past week, right? The last few days, for sure. And it's interesting to see portrayed all over the iconography, right? These statues that are venerated, to hear aloud the prayers to Mary, to hear aloud the rituals that are associated with the mass intention. That's interesting too. I never realized that. I didn't realize that it was an intention and not a prayer service, but a mass intention. It is the direction and harvesting of particular energies. That is an interesting thing. And knowing the things that I know now, I got to see it in action, and it was an enlightening experience. It was definitely worth doing, right? Like, you're not going to be infected with something by exploring other things, right? I want to go to a Buddhist temple. I want to go and see the other faiths and look at their procedures and see what they do, right? I don't necessarily think that I'm going to participate in everything, like I didn't participate in everything yesterday, but it is interesting to see it in action. And so all of this about the symbology, yeah, you're right, it's there. I have a different look at what happened on Patmos. Now, we have done an unconventional study of prophecy where we dealt with Isaiah and Daniel and Ezekiel and John. We talk often about how I believe that prophecy is a very real thing, that you can indeed have things shown to you. I have had them myself. Some things that I did not have any control over, right? Until this past week, I have not been able to visually make pictures appear, right? This week, I have been given a key, and I have been experimenting with it, and it is a thing that I am still working on. But up until very recently, I have not been able to do that. Anything I saw was completely out of my control. And so I do not discount the possibility of prophecy. But prophecy can only be interpreted by the understanding that you already have. We've talked about it before, but you're probably not going to go back and click into Bible studies. That's how it apparently works. But if I was to take Ezekiel and sit him right here beside me, he would have no way of describing the things that we are doing right here. He would not be able to describe this screen or this computer or this microphone. He would not be able to understand or comprehend how I can talk to this little thing right here and then play it back and you can listen to me talk later. But he would try. He would do his best. He would say that there was a talking rock, possibly, an illuminated rock, something of that nature. Now, that doesn't mean that this TV is ensouled. It doesn't mean that it is something that can think for itself. But to him, it would be magic. He would interpret it to the best of his ability, but that would be the most that he could do. But if he was brought here and you gave me a year and the language barrier was overcome, I could train him to run this computer. I could tell him everything that was involved. I could show him how to do the various processes. And within a year, he could be doing exactly what I'm doing, probably less, but give it a year. And he would be able to explain those things in a better manner. It's the same with prophecy. You can see things that you don't understand and you will attempt to convey them the best that you can. Now, what happened on Patmos is a little bit different because while I do believe that he had a vision, most of what he had was a retelling of the previous visions that came before, and not just retellings, but misinterpretations of them in large part. Like, we have gone through that in extensive detail, so I'm not going to dig through and talk about all of the different points in which it is different, but it is definitely different. I believe that there is something. I believe that all of these prophets saw something and they interpreted it to the best that they could. I believe that looking too far ahead in the future is a bad idea. I believe that you can read the energies now and in the near future, and you can get an understanding of how things are probably going to play out, and you can even change those things. But if you're looking 2,000 years into the future, you're probably going to get some things wrong. You're probably going to completely misunderstand some things and not wrap your head around them. It's entirely possible. But I have a different view on what is coming. Right? We talk about all of the time the 12,000 year disaster cycle. I'm going to go ahead and link the video up here for you instead of the playlist. And the 12,000 year disaster cycle gives us some explanation on what is possibly to come. We can go back to Plato and read through Timaeus and Critias. I forget which one it is that has the actual record, but the records that came from Solon, from his great-grandfather, how there is a cycle of destruction that overtakes the planet and that we have forgotten it. I believe that we're about to remember it very, very harshly. I think we got some time, right? It's probably 20 to 30 years down the road. We have time to prepare for it. It's going to look a lot like what was in Revelation, but not exactly. He was self-inserting in a way that everybody seems to do, right? There are things that are common throughout all the threads of prophecy, and then there are some things that were definitely inserted in, and that's fine. He was interpreting according to the best of his ability. Will it play out exactly as it is in Revelation? Probably not. But it will probably be fairly close. We will probably hear some sounds of some trumpets. That is true. Will people rapture off? Almost definitely not. Right? That doesn't really have any foundation in the book whatsoever. But there is definitely going to be a lot less people around. And for various reasons, which we discuss in other places, and so we're going to get back into the text. But before we get into Manly Hall's interpretation of what this means, I want to point out that I hold some different ones, and that mine seem to have a little bit better foundation than some of the other ones. And I don't say that with pride, right? That is just a thing. So, let's go. In the opening chapter of the Apocalypse, St. John describes the Alpha and Omega, who stood in the midst of the 7 golden candlesticks, surrounded by his flaming planetary regions. The Sublime One thus epitomizes in one impressive and mysterious figure the entire sweep of humanity's evolutionary growth, past, present, and future. The first stages of man's earthly development, writes Dr. Rudolf Steiner, ran their course at the period when the earth was still fiery, and the first human incarnations were formed out of the element of fire. At the end of his earthly career, man will himself radiate his inner being outwards creatively by the force of the element of fire. That's not actually untrue. This continuous development from the beginning to the end of the earth reveals itself to the seer when he sees on the astral plane the archetype of the evolving man. The beginning of the earthly revolution stands forth in the fiery feet. Its ends in the fiery countenance, and the complete power of the creative word, to be finally one, is seen in the fiery source coming out of the mouth. That is all three talking about the being, the holy fire, the Holy Spirit, the becoming. Right? We talk about the Trinity. I know you're new here. The body is one part of the Trinity. It is earth. The soul, the individualized spark of divinity, that is you making the decisions inside of the meat suit, that is the water. And then the air or fire is the creative process that allows all things to happen. It is the becoming into time. That is the Holy Spirit, right? It is the part that makes your blood flow. It is the part that changes your oxygen into the fuel that you need and changes the food into the fuel you need. It is the part that changes things. That is the creative fire. And you can indeed project your inner being outwards creatively through the force of the element fire. We do talk about that in various other playlists, but that is from the 7 internal chakras and the 1 external chakra. You can project the fire through the heart out into your divine chakra and strengthen it. And so, yeah, you can absolutely do that part. See occult seals and columns. In his restored New Testament, James Morgan Price traces the relationship to the various parts of the Alpha Omega to the 7 sacred planets of the ancients. To quote, we'll come back after the quote. The Logos figure described as a composite figure of the 7 sacred planets. He has the snowy white hair of Kronos, Father Time, the blazing wide-seeing eyes, Zeus, the sword of Arcs, the shining face of Helios, and the chiton and girdle of Aphrodite. His feet are Mercury, the metal sacred to Hermes, and his voice is like the murmur of the ocean's waves. The many waters alluding to Selene, the moon goddess of the 4 seasons and the waters. Now see, that is not how it's described in the book, but Okay, the throne of, okay, but it did say that that was in a different, yeah, the restored. The throne of God and the Lamb from Jacob Damon's work. And yeah, that is a representation of something, all right. Before the throne of God was the crystal sea representing the Shamayim, or the living waters, which are above the heavens. Before the throne also were four creatures, a bull, a lion, an eagle, and a man. These represented the four corners of creation, and the multitude of eyes with which they were covered are the stars of the firmament. The 24 elders have the same significance as the priests gathered around the statue of Ceres in the greater Eleusinian rite, and also the Persian genii, or gods of the hours of the day, who, casting away their crowns, glorify the Holy One. As symbolic of the divisions of time, the elders adore the timeless and enduring Spirit in the midst of them. The seven stars, carried by this immense being in his right hand, are the governors of the world. The flaming sword issuing from his mouth is the creative fiat, or word of power, the toroid which you create when you speak, by which the illusion of material permanence is slain. Here also is represented in all its symbolic splendor the Hierophant of the Phrygian mysteries, his various insignia emblematic of his divine attributes. 7 priests bearing lamps are his attendants, and the stars carried in his hands are the 7 schools of the mysteries, whose power he administers. As one born again out of spiritual darkness into perfect wisdom, this Archimagus is made to say, I am he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore. Amen, and have the keys of hell and death. In the 2nd and 3rd chapters, St. John delivers to the 7 churches, which are in Asia, the injunctions received by him from the Alpha and Omega. The churches are here analogous to the rungs of a Mithraic ladder, and John, being in the Spirit, ascended through the orbits of the 7 sacred planets until he reached the inner surface of the Empyrean. We have discussed the 7 churches and how they are almost certainly relative, but not necessarily in this. Now, the Mithraic ladder does correspond to what we talk about when we talk about the ascension process, the guiding of the energy up and down the spinal column in a way that balances it and creates the balance necessary to form an actual ladder, right? It is the balancing of the light and the dark, right? And all of the different things, the 7 things that you have to balance within yourself, or the 14 things that balance into 7. After the soul of the prophet, writes the anonymous author of Mankind, Their Origin and Destiny, in his ecstatic state has passed in its rapid flight through the 7 spheres, from the sphere of the moon to that of Saturn, or from the planet which corresponds to Cancer, the gate of men, to that of Capricorn, which is the gate of the gods, a new gate opens to him in the highest heaven, and in the zodiac, beneath which the 7 planets revolve, in a word, in the firmament, or that which the ancients called crystallium premium, or the crystal heaven. I do not believe in the most popular context of the firmament, right? There's no globe or dome placed over a flat earth. Now, if you were talking about the firmament as being the firm separation of the atmosphere from the space, we're good. We're golden. I believe that. I believe in the firm separation of the terrestrial from the atmospheric, right? There is a firm, clear dividing line between air and earth. The same is true between air and space. That is a firm placement. That I'm okay with. But if you were like, oh, we're on a flat circle and there's Antarctica around the outside to prevent the water from spilling off, no. That doesn't work. When related to the Eastern system of metaphysics, these churches represent the chakras, or nerve ganglia along the human spine, the door to heaven being the Brahmandra, or the point in the crown of the skull, Golgotha, through which the spinal spirit fire passes to liberation. The Church of Ephesus corresponds to the Muladhara, or sacral ganglion, that would be way down here around the reproductive area, and the other churches to the higher ganglia according to the order given in Revelation. So you do not have the full understanding. I got you. Dr. Steiner discovers a relationship between the seven churches and the divisions of the Aryan race. Thus, the Church of Ephesus stands for the Arch-Indian branch. No. The Church of Smyrna, the Arch-Persian. The Church of Pergamos, the Chaldean Egyptian Semitic. The Church of Thyatira, the Grecian Latin Roman. The Church of Sardis, the Teuton Anglo-Saxon. The Church of Philadelphia, the Slavic. And the Church of Laodicea, the Manichaean. The seven churches also signify the Greek vowels, of which Alpha and Omega are the first and the last. A difference of opinion exists as to the order in which the seven planars should be related to the churches. There is a reason for that. Some proceeded from the hypothesis that Saturn represents the Church of Ephesus, but from the fact that this city was sacred to the moon goddess, and also the sphere of the moon is the first above that of the earth. The planets, obviously, should ascend in their ancient order from the moon to Saturn. From Saturn, the soul would naturally ascend through the door of the Empyrean. Okay, so no, like the Arch-Indian branch was Ephesus. Ephesus is all the way on the western side of by the Mediterranean, right? All the churches are in Turkey, right? All seven of the churches mentioned. None of them are in the Holy Land. None of them are down in Ethiopia or Egypt, which had major churches of the time. None of them were in Greece. All the churches were in Turkey. We have done this in the Bible study, if you care to go back and look. And so, no, this does not talk about the Arch-Indians and the Arch-Persians and the Chaldean Egyptians. This is self-assertion. This is you deciding, well, we can say there was a bunch of people who were Egyptian and Chaldean who lived in Pergamos, but it was mostly Greek Turks, right? You had the Greek Empire, and you had the Turks, but like, no, like this is self-insertion. This is how shit gets made fun of. Now there are, right, if you read through the letters, you can definitely infer that one of them's talking about wrath, and one of them's talking about pride, and one of them's talking about sex, right? You can deal with these issues, and that is dealing with the seven chakras. Now, the order of these things have a lot to do with the stuff I got wrote on this board back here, right? The MBTI stuff will tell you the order that this needs to be in you in order for you to deal with your issues. It's different for people, right? There are 32 variations and infinite mixes of those variations. So even if you are like me, I'm an INFJ, even if you are an INFJ, we're going to make different decisions. The focus of the thing is the same. The trials will be close to the same, but we will make different decisions within that. It's not a predetermined type of thing, but it helps you to identify the order that this needs to be in order for you to fix you. All right, back to the text. In the 4th and 5th chapters, St. John describes the throne of God upon which sat the Holy One, which was and is to come. About the throne were 24 lesser seats. That's 3 divided by 8, or 24 divided by 3 is 8, right? Upon which sat 24 elders, arrayed in white garments and wearing crowns of gold. And out of the throne proceeded lightnings and thunderings and voices, and there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. The 7 facets of God, if you were unaware, we have a video on that. He who sat upon the throne held in his right hand a book, sealed with 7 seals. I wonder if that correlates, which no man in heaven or earth had been found worthy to open. Then appeared a lamb, Aries, the first and chief of the zodiacal signs, which had been slain, having 7 horns, rays, and 7 eyes, lights. The Lamb took the book from the right hand of him that sat upon the throne, and the 4 beasts and all the elders fell down and worshipped the God and the Lamb. During the early centuries of the Christian Church, the Lamb was universally recognized as the symbol of Christ, and not until after the 5th Synod of Constantinople, the Quinisext Synod, AD 692, was the figure of the crucified man substituted for that of Agnus Dei. As shrewdly noted by one writer on the subject, the use of a lamb is indicative of the Persian origin of Christianity, for the Persians were the only people to symbolize the first sign of the zodiac by a lamb. Because the lamb was the sin offering of the ancient pagans, the early mystic Christians considered this animal as an appropriate emblem of Christ, whom they regarded as the sin offering of the world. The Greeks and the Egyptians highly venerated the lamb or ram, often placing its horns upon the forehead of their gods. The Scandinavian god Thor carried a hammer made from a pair of ram's horns. The lamb is used in preference to the ram. The lamb is used in preference to the ram, apparently because of its purity and gentleness. Also, since the Creator himself was symbolized by Ares, his son would consequently be the little ram or lamb. The lambskin apron worn by the Freemasons over that part of the body symbolized by Typhon or Judas represents that purification. That purification of the generative processes, which is a prerequisite to true spirituality. The allegory of the lamb signifies the purified candidate, and its 7 horns representing the divisions of illuminated reason, and its 7 eyes the chakras, or perfected sense perceptions. These 7 eyes are you can go with the chakras, right? But you have the 7 pointies, and you have the 7 takies. Now, you have 7 horns which protrude out, and you have 7 eyes which receive, right? I wonder what that could possibly signify. Now, I'm not a big one for running around talking about phallus, but there is a balance that has to be struck between 7 things. 7 of them are masculine, 7 of them are feminine. And the balance has to be met between that masculine and feminine. And I wonder if possibly that could be significant here. Maybe. Possibly. The 6th to 11th chapters, inclusive, are devoted to an account of the openings of the 7 seals on the book held by the Lamb. When the first seal was broken, there rode forth a man on a white horse wearing a crown and holding in his hand a bow. When the second seal was broken, there rode forth a man on a red horse, and in his hand was a great sword. When the third seal was broken, there rode forth a man on a black horse, and with a pair of balances in his hand. And when the 4th seal was broken, there rode forth Death on a pale horse, and hell followed after him. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse may be interpreted to signify the 4 main divisions of human life. Birth is represented by the rider on the white horse, who comes forth conquering and to conquer. The impetuosity of youth by the rider on the red horse, who took peace from the earth. Maturity by the rider on the black horse, who weighs all things in the scales of reason. And death by the rider on the pale horse, who was given power over a 4th part of the earth. In the Eastern philosophy, these horsemen signify the 4 yugas, or ages, of the world, which, riding forth at their appointed times, become for a certain span the rulers of creation. There's a lot to take exception with in that, right? You can absolutely decide to read anything in the manner in which you wish to read it. You can. But in order to get this out of that, then you have to completely dispose of everything written in the text about it, right? The guy that's coming forth to conquer and to conquer, he has a mission and a role. But the rider on the red horse, the impetuosity, no, he's being told he's coming to kill a lot of things. That is what is being said, not even implied, directly said about these people. Death is plague. Famine is the rider on the black horse. These things are expressly stated. You have to dismiss that if you want to interpret it in this manner. And you can, right? I change things all the time. I am clear when I do it that I am looking at it in a different manner. So you can look at it like this. You can interpret according to your understanding however you want to. Again, I refer back to the Bible study. I know it gets annoying to hear me say that, but there's a reason why there are 161 videos in that. Commenting on the 24th allocution of Chrysostom in The Origin of All Religious Worship, Dupuy notes that each of the 4 elements was represented by a horse bearing the name of the god who is set over the element. The first horse, signifying the fire ether, was called Jupiter, and occupied the highest place in the order of the elements. This horse was winged, very fleet, and describing the largest circle, encompassed all the others. It shone with the purest light, and on his body were the images of the sun, the moon, and the stars, and all the bodies in the ethereal regions. The second horse, signifying the element of air, was Juno. It was inferior to the horse of Jupiter and described a smaller circle. Its color was black, but that part exposed to the sun became luminous, thus signifying the diurnal and nocturnal conditions of air. The third horse, symbolizing the element of water, was sacred to Neptune. It was of heavy gait and described a very small circle. The fourth horse, signifying the static element of earth, described as immovable and champing its bit, was the steed of Vesta. Despite their differences in temperature, these four horses lived harmoniously together, which is in accord with the principles of the philosophers who declared the world to be preserved by the concord and harmony of its elements. In time, however, the racing horse of Jupiter burned the mane of the horse of the earth. The thundering steed of Neptune also became covered with sweat, which overflowed the immovable horse of Vesta and resulted in the deluge of Deucalion. At last, the fiery horse of Jupiter will consume the rest, when the three inferior elements, purified by reabsorption in the fiery ether, will come forth renewed, constituting a new heaven and a new earth. We're not even going to deal with that. When the fifth seal was opened, St. John beheld who had died for the word of God. When the sixth seal was broken, there was a great earthquake, and the sun being darkened and the moon becoming like blood. The angels of the winds came forth, and also another angel, who sealed upon their foreheads 144,000 of the children of Israel, that they should be preserved against the awful day of tribulation. By adding the digits together, according to the Pythagorean system of numerical philosophy, the number 144,000 is reduced to 9. The mystic symbol of man, and also the number of initiation. For he who passes through the 9 degrees of the mysteries receives the sign of the cross as emblematic of his regeneration and liberation from the bondage of his own infernal or inferior nature. The addition of the 3 ciphers to the original sacred number 1.44 indicates the elevation of the mystery to the 3rd sphere. You can believe that. I give a good Bible study. Like that's all I can say. Like we talked about this in detail and so this is an interpretation, right? I can't just casually dismiss it because it could be true, but I really doubt it. Right? This seems like self-insertion to me in the grandest scale. But I mean, that is not uncommon in Masonic literature from what we've seen so far, right? They take something and they assume they know what it means, and even though they really don't, they even know that they don't have their own word, and still they believe that they have it. They believe that they got it, and so they espouse it, and that's fine. That's what we do. When the 7th seal was broken, there was silence for the space of half an hour, so you can listen. Then came forth 7 angels, and to each was given a trumpet. And when the 7 angels sounded their trumpet, intoned the 7-lettered name of the Logos, great catastrophes ensued. A star, which was called Wormwood, fell from heaven, thereby signifying that the secret doctrine of the ancients had been given to men who had profounded it, and caused the wisdom of God to become a destructive agency. And another star, symbolizing the false light of human reason as distinguished from the divine reason of the initiate. No self-insertion there. Fell from heaven, and to it, materialistic reason was given the key to the bottomless pit, nature, which it opened, causing all manner of evil creatures to issue forth. And there came also a mighty angel, who was clothed in a cloud, whose face was as the sun, and his feet as legs a pillar of fire. And one foot was upon the waters, and the other upon the land. The Hermetic Anthropos. The celestial being gave St. John a little book, bidding him eat it, which the seer did. The book is representative of the secret doctrine, that spiritual food which is the nourishment of the spirit. And St. John, being in the spirit, ate his fill of the wisdom of God, and the hunger of his soul was appeased. The 12th chapter treats of the great wonder appearing in the heavens. A woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. I missed an illustration. We're going to have to go back. The woman represents the constellation of Virgo and also the Egyptian Isis, who, about to be delivered of her son Horus, is attacked by Typhon, the latter attempting to destroy the child predestined by the gods to slay the spirit of evil. The war in heaven relates to the destruction of the planet Ragnarok and to the fall of the angels. The Virgin can be interpreted to signify the secret doctrine itself, and her son the initiate born out of the womb of the mysteries. The spirit of evil, thus personified in the great dragon, attempted to control mankind by destroying the mother of those illumined souls who have labored unceasingly for the salvation of the world. Wings were given to the mysteries, the Virgin, and they flew to the wilderness, and the evil dragon tried to destroy them with a flood of false doctrine, but the earth, oblivion, swallowed up the false doctrines, and the mysteries endured. That is again an interpretation. We'll come back. Let's go up here so I don't forget. Episodes from the Mysteries of the Apocalypse from Clauber's Historiae Biblicae, Veteris et Novi Testamente. And again, we can't get much detail out of this. I see an altar and a man in front of it. I see several cherubim. This must be heaven, of course. This is the representation of the angels around the thrones, I guess. In the central foreground, St. John the Divine is kneeling before the apparition of the Alpha and Omega, standing in the midst of the seven lights and surrounded by an aureole of flames and smoke. In the heavens above, the 24 elders, with their harps and censers, bow before the throne of the Ancient One, from whose hand the Lamb is taking the book sealed with the 7 seals, the 7 Spirit of God in the form of cups, from which issue tongues of fire, surround the head of the Ancient One, and the 4 beasts, the cherubim, kneel at the corners of his throne. In the upper left-hand corner are shown the 7 angels bearing the trumpets, and also the altar of God and the angel with the censer. In the upper right are the spirits of the winds. Below them is the Virgin clothed with the sun, to whom wings were given that she might fly into the wilderness. To her right in the scene, representing the spirits of God, hurling the evil serpent into the bottomless pit. At the lower left, St. John is shown receiving from the angelic figure, whose legs are pillars of fire and whose face is a shining sun, the little book which he is told to eat if he would understand the mysteries of the spiritual life. The plate also contains a number of other symbols, including episodes from the destruction of the world and the crystal sea pouring forth from the throne of God. By the presentation of such symbolic conceptions in the form of rituals and dramatic episodes, the secrets of the Phrygian mysteries were perpetuated. When these sacred pageantries were thus revealed to all mankind indiscriminately, and each human soul was appointed its own initiator into the holy rite of the philosophic life, a boon was conferred upon humanity which cannot be fully appreciated until men and women have grown more responsive to those mysteries which are of the Spirit. Using it as a method for ascension is a good thing, right? Anything that is going to bring you more self-awareness of what you need to improve in your own life through your own revelations of your own self is going to help you. But the condemnations and the attachments that come along with it necessarily will not. John's vision of the New Jerusalem from Clauber's Historiae Biblicae, Veteris et Novi Testamente. This is the New Jerusalem where everybody is going to live. In the upper left-hand corner is shown the destruction of Babylon, also the angel which cast the great millstone into the sea, saying, "Thus with more violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all." Below is the horseman called Faithful and True, casting the beast into the bottomless pit. At the lower right is the angel with the keys to the bottomless pit, who with a great chain binds Satan for 1,000 years. In the heavens above is represented one like unto the Son of Man, who carries a great sickle, with which he reaps the harvest of the world. In the center of the holy city, the New Jerusalem, with its 12 gates, and the mountains of the Lamb rising in the midst thereof. From the throne of the Lamb pours the great river of crystal or living water, signifying the spiritual doctrine. Upon all who discover and drink of its waters are conferred immortality. Kneeling upon a high cliff, St. John gazes down upon the mystic city, the archetype of the perfect civilization yet to be. Above the New Jerusalem, in a great sunburst of glory, is the throne of the Ancient One, which is the light of those who dwell in the matchless empire of the Spirit. Beyond the recognition of the uninitiated world is an ever-increasing aggregation composed of the spiritual elect. Though they walk the earth as ordinary mortals, they are of a world apart, and through their ceaseless efforts the kingdom of God is being slowly but surely established upon earth. These illumined souls are the builders of the New Jerusalem, and their bodies are the living stones in its walls. Lighted by the torch of truth, they carry on their work. Through their activities, in the golden age will return to earth, and the power of sin and death will be destroyed. For this reason, they declare that virtuous and illuminated men, instead of ascending to heaven, will bring heaven down and establish it in the midst of earth itself. Now, in part, that is talking about self-responsibility, so absolutely. But on the other hand, it is denying most of the spiritual aspects attained from that, and that's not so much, right? Now, again, I vary greatly, and I don't believe that there is a permanent fixture called heaven. I don't believe there is a permanent fixture called hell. I don't believe that you will be condemned to endless flames and torture. I don't believe that is the process by which we were here. I don't believe that, both from the Bible study and through direct revelation that I have had myself. You can go back to the Bible study and we discussed that in great detail. So, for some parts of this, I do agree, right? We are meant to make this world better. We are meant to take control of ourselves and those around us. We are meant to be morally responsible and do the things that we know are correct with no equivocation. We shouldn't have to have the threat of a hell in order to do the right thing. You should be willing to do the right thing regardless of whether or not there will be a punishment attached. As a matter of fact, you should be more than willing to die for the right thing. Then this earth, this life is fleeting, and it is much worse to live having broken your own morals than it is to just go on home standing for truth. But assigning, like, the spirit of evil is personified in the great dragon. Okay, that's fairly accepted, right? Wings were given to the mysteries. No, wings were given to the people practicing the mysteries. There is a big difference, right? It allows the mysteries to survive, yes, but it is the people who flee. It is the people who go. It is the people who are commanded when you see these things go. I'm screaming the same thing, right? We talk about that in the 12,000 year disaster cycle. That is why it's linked up here. There is something coming. You will need to run when you see the thing in the sky. It is good to be able to identify it. And if you were thinking that it is all allegory, you're going to be awfully confused here very shortly. And by very shortly, I mean probably 20 years away. So, the 13th chapter describes a great beast which rose up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Faber sees in this amphibious monster the Demiurgus, or creator of the world, rising out of the ocean of chaos. That's an interpretation. While most interpreters of the apocalypse consider the various beasts described therein as atypical of evil agencies, this viewpoint is the inevitable result of unfamiliarity with the ancient doctrines from which the symbolism of the book is derived. Astronomically, the great monster rising out of the sea is the constellation of Cetus, the whale. I would like to see source on that. Because religious ascetics looked upon the constellation of Cetus, looked upon the universe itself as an evil and ensnaring fabrication, they also came to regard its very creator as a weaver of delusions. Thus, the great sea monster, the world, and its maker, the Demiurgus, whose strength is derived from the dragon of cosmic power, came to be personified as a beast of horror and destruction, seeking to swallow up the immortal part, of human nature. The 7 heads of the monster represent the 7 stars, spirits, composing the constellations of the Great Dipper, called by the Hindus rishis, or cosmic creative spirits. The 10 horns Faber relates to the 10 primordial patriarchs. These may also denote the ancient zodiac or 10 signs. Okay, there's a couple things of note here. The sea, the beast that comes out of the sea is commonly believed, and most biblical scholars will agree, to be humanity, right? The beast rises up out of humanity and straddles and rules over humanity. Calling this the demiurgus is really, really stretching things. Now, I hold some unconventional beliefs, and I do believe that we will see a thing in the sky. When this disaster cycle once again comes back, we will see once again this sign in the sky. It will cause terror across the entirety of the planet. Everybody, and by everybody I never mean every single person, but rather the mass of humanity, everybody is going to look at this thing and be like, terrified. They're going to shit themselves. They are going to pass out and die from terror. We are going to see this thing on an approaching path with us, and there is nothing we can do to stop it. Whether it's visible by day and night, I don't know, but it is possible. I believe that it is going to come from close to the sun, so I don't know that you're going to be able to see it too well at night until it is time to see it at night. I believe that being visible in the daytime is one of the things that is going to let us know that it is what we are looking for. It is an abomination. I believe that when it comes in, we will see what looks like 7 heads coming off of it. And around that will be a nimbus that probably looks like 10 crowns. I pull this through an amalgamation of things, right? We talk about this in the 12,000 year disaster cycle. I believe that there is a lot of different source materials that record this in slightly different ways all over the world, and that we will indeed see something in the sky. It will be an abomination that causeth desolation, being in the holy place where it should not be. That, I believe, is what is going to be the, hey, it's time to run, right? Whenever you see that, there are 2 choices, run or die, right? You're not supposed to fight. If you fight for whatever, you're going to die anyway, right? That is the great martyrdom. And so I don't necessarily hold with all of this, but there can be some truth in this, right? The cosmic power personified as a beast of horror and destruction, I believe it has very valid reasons. It is because it has happened before, and humanity has a very long memory. You don't know what I'm talking about there? Think about this. You are biologically predisposed to identify snakes. You will identify that danger very quickly, and it will create a visceral reaction in you. It doesn't matter if you've never seen a snake before and have no clue. You were raised 40 years in complete isolation and never saw a snake. When you see a snake, you will react. If a shadow passes over, you will react. You will want to know exactly what it is. That, again, is a biological imperative, part of you, who you are. And I think that part of that is this, right? Yes, there were predators from above. Absolutely. But I believe that part of that is this, that is a human remembering that once upon a time there was a sign in the sky, and when that sign appeared, there was severe destruction that destroyed almost the entirety of human life on the planet. Not once, not even twice, but repeatedly and trackably through history. That is an interesting thing that you should dive a little bit deeper into. The 10 primordial patriarchs, that is going back to the legend of Atlantis. If you do not know about that, check out the works of Plato and Critias, which we have read. I almost said reading, which we have read aloud. And it is talking about the 10 sons of Atlas, who were formed, placed on the island of Atlantis, and given 10 kingdoms on the island of Atlantis, which at the time was as large as Saharan Africa. All right, back to the text. The number of the beast, 666 is an interesting example of the use of Kabbalism in the New Testament and among early Christian mystics. In the following table, Kircher shows that the names of the Antichrist, as given by Irenaeus, all have 666 as their numerical equivalent. I have already dealt with Gematria and how I do not necessarily hold that this is important in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. This can entirely be a coincidence. James Morgan Price also notes that according to this method of figuring, the Greek term, which signifies the lower mind, has 666 as its numerical equivalent. It is well known to Kabbalists that in the of Jesus has for its numerical value another sacred and secret number, 888. Adding the digits of the number 666 and again adding the digits of the sum gives the sacred number 9, the symbol of man in his unregenerate state and also the path of his resurrection. The 14th chapter opens with the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, the eastern horizon, and about him gathered the 144,000, with the name of God written on their foreheads. An angel thereupon announces the fall of Babylon, the city of confusion or worldliness. Those perish who do not overcome worldliness and enter into the realization that spirit, and not matter, is enduring. For having no interest other than those which are material, they are swept to destruction with the material world. And St. John beheld one like unto the Son of Man, Perseus, riding on a cloud, the substances of the invisible world, and bearing in his hand a sharp sickle, and with the sickle the shining one reaped the earth. There is a symbol of the initiator releasing into the sphere of reality the higher natures of those who, symbolized by ripened grain, have reached the point of liberation. And there came another angel, Boots, death, also with a sickle, Karma, who reaped the vines of the earth, those who have lived by the false light, and cast them into the winepress of the wrath of God, the purgatorial spheres. The 15th to 18th chapters inclusive contain an account of 7 angels, the Pleiades, who pour their vials upon the earth. Again, I believe that this is celestial activities as part of the process that is to come. The contents of their vials, the loosened energy of the cosmic bull, are called the 7 last plagues. Here also is introduced a symbolic figure termed the harlot of Babylon, who is described as a woman seated upon a scarlet-colored beast, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and bedecked with gold, precious stones, and pearls, having in her hand a cup full of abominations. This figure may be an effort, probably interpolated, to vilify Sybil or Artemis, the great mother goddess of antiquity. Because the pagans venerated the Mater Deorum, through symbols appropriate to the feminine generative principle, they were accused by the early Christians of worshipping a courtesan. As nearly all the ancient mysteries included a test of the neophyte's moral character, the tempest, the animal soul, is here portrayed as a pagan goddess. We talked extensively in the Bible study. I'm not going to bother. I've already extrapolated an awful lot about things that it needs more content, right? It needs more than I can put in here. That's why I refer you back to the other videos. That's why I even did the other videos. Because all the groundwork that is required to walk through these prophecies has to be discussed, and there's a lot of it. So, in the 19th and 20th chapters is set forth the preparation of that mystical sacrament called the marriage of the Lamb. The bride is the soul of the neophyte, which attains conscious immortality by uniting itself to its own spiritual source. The heavens opened once more, and St. John saw a white horse, and the rider, the illumined mind, which sat upon it was called Faithful and True. Out of his mouth issued a sharp sword, and the armies of heaven followed after him. Upon the plains of heaven was fought the mystic Armageddon, the last great war between light and darkness. The forces of evil under the Persian Ahriman battled against the forces of good under Ahura Mazda. Evil was vanquished, and the beast and false prophet cast into a lake of fiery brimstone. Satan was bound for 1,000 years. Then followed the last judgment. The books were opened, including the book of life. The dead were judged according to their works, and those whose names were not in the book of life were cast into a sea of fire. To the neophyte, Armageddon represents the last struggle between the flesh and spirit when, finally, overcoming the world, the illumined soul rises to union with its spiritual self. The judgment signifies the weighing of the soul and was borrowed from the mysteries of Osiris. The rising of the dead from their graves and from the sea of illusion represents the consummation of the process of human regeneration. The sea of fire into which those are cast who fail in the ordeal of initiation signifies the fiery sphere of the animal world. In the 21st and 22nd chapters are pictured the new heavens and the new earth to be established at the close of Alderman's reign. St. John, carried in the Spirit to a great and high mountain, the brain, beheld the new Jerusalem descending as a bride, adorned for her husband. The holy city represents the regenerated and perfected world, the true ashlar of the mason. For the city was a perfect cube, it being written, the length and the breadth and the height of it are equal. The foundation of the holy city consisted of 144 stones, 12 rows, from which it is evident that the New Jerusalem represents the microcosm, patterned after the great universe in which it stands. The 12 gates of this symbolic dodecahedron are the signs of the zodiac through which the celestial impulses descend into the inferior world. The jewels are the precious stones of the zodiacal signs, and the transparent golden streets are the streams of spiritual light, along which the initiate passes on his path towards the sun. There is no material temple in that city, for God and the Lamb are the temple. And there is neither sun nor moon, for God and the Lamb are the light. The glorified and spiritualized initiate is here depicted as a city. This city will ultimately be united with the Spirit of God and absorbed into the divine effulgency. And St. John beheld a river, the water of life, which proceeded out of the throne of the Lamb. The river represents the stream pouring from the first Logos, which is the life of all things, and the active cause of all creation. There also was the tree of life, the Spirit, bearing 12 manner of fruit, whose leaves were for the healing of the nations. By the tree is also represented the year, which every month yields some good for the maintenance of existing creatures. Jesus then tells St. John that he is the root and the offspring of David, not really, and the bright and morning star, Venus. St. John concludes with the words, "The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you all. Amen." The four horsemen of the apocalypse, and we're going to go ahead and steal this because we're going to use that in the book, in the title, from Solis's Bibliae Figuren. In the allegory of the four horsemen, according to the mysteries of philosophy, is set forth the condition of man during the stages of his existence. In his first and spiritual state he is crowned, and he descends to the realm of experience. He carries the sword. Reaching physical expression, which is his least spiritual state, he carries the scales, and by the philosophic death is released again into the highest spheres. In the ancient Roman games, the chariot of the sun was drawn by 4 horses of different colors, and the horsemen of the apocalypse may be interpreted to represent the solar energy riding upon the 4 elements which serve as a media for its expression. Well, I accidentally hit quit recording, so we're going to have to do this again. There's a lot of stuff that I do not agree with in this, and there's a lot of stuff that is perfectly fine. There is a path to ascension, but it is not, as far as I can determine, being revealed at all by the Masons. They have half of the process, and they do not even understand the half of the process that they have. They don't believe in part of it, according to the works that we have read from this. But there is definitely something here. There is a path that you can find here. I talk about the path that I am on an awful lot because I know that my path works. Right? And when I say my path, it is the path that has been shown to me that has worked for me. It is a path that requires discipline. You have to pray, you have to fast, you have to meditate. You have to work with the energy centers in the body and the one without. You have to actively work at balancing the 7 sins and the 7 virtues. I don't see that expressed in these books. What I see here is the exclusion being emphasized. Exclusion is not the path. If someone is teaching you that peace at all cost is the path, they are teaching you incorrectly. There is a reason to get mad. There is a reason to use that anger in a righteous manner at times, and sometimes that does include violence. It's never the first option if you are actually on the path, but it is an option. If you ride off into the Crusades to bring Christendom to the heathen, you are doing it wrong. If you ride off in Antifada to bring Islam to the heathen, you are doing it wrong. That is not the point. But if you are upholding the 12 pillars of Islam in the way that you are called to do, then you are absolutely on the right path. If you are doing the things that are told to you to do in the Sermon on the Mount, you're on the right path. If you are striving to hold the 10 Commandments in the way that the Jews do, you are on the right path. God will find you where you are. He doesn't require you to come to Him or this one particular path. The path that I talk about here is for those who cannot walk the other path. If you cannot live within the control systems, there is something different that you can do. I believe that I have a key that they don't. I believe that I have the parts that are missing from all of these other places. Now, Christianity in all its myriad of forms is a control system. Islam is a control system. Buddhism is a control system. Masonry is a control system. They are different ways created to try to get to a result. I don't believe that they get to the result. For the most part, like in its entirety. What we have seen so far has been about exclusion, right? Make sure you are chaste. Make sure you're doing this. Like, there is a time for all things. You're not supposed to be sexually promiscuous, but you are not supposed to be in a vow of celibacy. If so, you are doing it wrong. You are meant to be here to procreate. That is why you were created. That is why it is such an empirical drive within us. And the deviations not being accounted, right? Most people want that. They want to procreate. That is because it is a biological imperative. It is something that is hardwired into you. It is part of your process. Well, so is anger. So is greed. So is pride. But there are healthy ways to use these things, and there are unhealthy ways to use these things. And it is not about exclusion. It is about finding the balance. Well, this doesn't require my violent intentions. But this self-defense right here, that is absolutely something that I can do, right? That is not something I am going to be condemned to hell if I don't turn the other cheek. It's not. And anybody teaching you that is teaching you incorrectly. That is true for all of the sins, right? The 7 vices. There are 7 virtues, and overtaking the 7 virtues is just as bad as overtaking their counterparts, the 7 vices. It is meant to be balanced within you. I outline a process, not as clear as I am trying to get to, right? We are trying to get the groundwork done so that I can put out the process in full that I use. But it involves prayer, fasting, and meditation, and it involves moving the energies both up and down, Boaz and Jachin, to take the 2 pillars and to intermingle them, because you are not meant to be exclusive from them. You're supposed to be in the middle of them. The latter, that's the same thing. It is the balance of these things that allow us to do what we need to do. You were put here for a purpose. There is a reason for you to be here. We need to find our own reasons. I believe part of my reason is this, what we do here. It is to shine light on things. I do believe that was a direct command. I fought against this. But the things that convince me of that are not even considered in this, right? We saw in the last one, or the one before, where they don't really believe in the mystical part of this. They do the ceremonies, but they don't believe in the things behind the ceremonies. I do emphatically believe in the magic behind it. I am not in any way, shape, or form ashamed to say that. I believe that God gave us the capacity to do these things, and it is the control systems which have convinced us that it is wrong. Does that mean that you can go around just creating something from nothing? No, there are 8 laws of creation. And if you are not in alignment with the 8 laws of creation, then the 8 laws of creation will absolutely bite you in the ass. But if you are in accordance with the 8 laws of creation, then the 8 laws of creation will allow you to create in the manner in which you were meant to do it, to call abundance into your life, to call healing into your life, to change things about yourself that you want to change. That is the whole point of me being here. It's the whole point of us doing these studies. There are things that I don't know. There are things that I do. I try to stay away from the ones that I don't. And if I don't and I am talking about it at all, I'm like, well, in my opinion, or in my conspiratorial mind, or I think. But if it's something that I know, then I'm going to stand on it. I know that this path that I am on is right. It's not the only one, but I know that this one leads somewheres. And I know where it leads. I have seen the end before it was done, and I know where I'm going. And it's all going to be okay. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat difficult topics. I understand that I have a tendency to step on toes when I am relaying my unconventional beliefs, and while that is not intentional, I do not apologize for it. I am here to do what I am here to do, and I will do what I am here to do. I am here to show a way. You don't have to believe that it is the way. I am fine with that. I don't want my name attached to it. Take it and run with it. Do things in your life that you want to do. I'm trying to give you tools. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment. Let me know you appreciate it or don't. If you agree or disagree, if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. I may not answer, or I may be brusque in my answer, but it is not me being rude. It's just me being certain. If you really like what I'm doing over here, hit me with that super thanks, because I am not a communist. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete, just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Take. Peace.